What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Perfect Mess Podcast. I'm your host, Ray Molina, and this is episode 80. I hope you guys are doing well. This is another Let's Talk About It episode. I'm going to keep it nice and short. And, I got an email the other day. Before we jump off into that, make sure to check out my website. It's raymolina.com. And then also follow me on Instagram at It's Ray Molina, and my TikTok is also the same, at It's Ray Molina. The podcast on Instagram is at The Perfect Mess Pod. I have a Facebook. I have a YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel for the podcast. Just search on YouTube The Perfect Mess Podcast with Ray Molina, and you will find me. Please subscribe there. I'm doing a lot more video work there and trying to share excerpts of these episodes and videos and shorts and all that type of thing, all those type of things on there. So I'm trying to grow that platform. So if you are on YouTube, please subscribe. And like always, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening, please subscribe, comment, review, share, follow. And if you hear anything that you think needs to be heard, please, by all means, share it with your friends and send them our way, man. I'm trying to definitely grow this platform, and I appreciate all of you who have been very supportive over this is going into the third year that I've been doing the podcast, and it's been doing well. So anyways, I hope you guys are doing well. I had something funny happen, all right? This is going to be a quick, in-your-face type deal. I had something funny happen to me yesterday. I got an email yesterday, okay, from Yelp. Those of you familiar with Yelp, Yelp is an app that you can review restaurant or businesses. It used to be just like food spots, but now it's businesses. It's been like that for years, where if you go into a business, if you have a bad experience or if you have a good experience, the food was great, the service was great, or whatever, or it was not great, or whatever, you want to complain about the management or the staff, whatever it is, you write a review on these companies, right? These businesses, and people get to go on there and read your reviews and decide whether they want to shop there or be a patron or whatever it is. So anyways, I've been a member of Yelp for a long time. I had my business on Yelp for a while. I pulled it off of Yelp, and that should have been the tell-all for me. I pulled my business off of Yelp because they kept calling me every month to spend money to run ads, and I kept telling them, stop calling me, I'm not spending money to run ads. I'm fine with just having my profile up there. It just got annoying, so eventually I just took my business down from Yelp. Excuse me, I'm drinking my morning coffee before I go into the gym. So I get an email from Yelp yesterday morning, and it says that they wanted to let me know that they removed 3 reviews that I had done on 3 separate businesses a year ago. They said, we wanted to let you know that we have removed these 3 reviews from these businesses, and that had to do with the mask mandate and the COVID-19 policy during the pandemic. And the reason being was this was not in the business control. This was them following guidelines from the county, and they had to do that. So those reviews were not valid. They removed them. They warned me if I have another strike on my account that they were going to ban me from Yelp and kick me off the platform. You heard right. They were going to ban me and kick me off the platform. Now, I didn't do anything derogatory. I just left a review. Now, you may be listening and say, well, I kind of agree with them. The businesses, in order to stay open, they had to abide by these rules. I'm with you on that. However, the reviews that I wrote were not during the mandates. The issue was the mandates had been lifted. They had been lifted already, and these were businesses that were kicking people out of their place of business because they weren't wearing a mask after the mandate had already been lifted. So I would go in there, or I would be in there and watch them literally kick people out being very rude to these people that were actually in their business trying to spend money, give them money for business. And they were kicking them out. And some of them were being very rude about it because they weren't wearing a mask. Again, I'm going to tell you guys, the mandate was over and they were still enforcing it. So that's what the 3 reviews were that they had removed. I'm beyond like being frustrated and disappointed because this is kind of where we're at as um, I want to say a country, but it's not just our country anymore. It's worldwide. Like if you speak up against something that has been so politicized, you run the risk of being banned, booted, blocked, whatever you want to call it, canceled, for speaking out and speaking your mind and having an opinion. The crazy thing about this is there's been so many different things going on um, lately that have to do with this that it got me thinking because I had made a comment a while back about an NFL player who, and I know this is going to sound like it's going off on a tangent, but it's not. It all ties into being censored and being forced to apologize and being told that if you don't apologize for your beliefs or your comments, that you're a bad person and you run the risk of being canceled, losing your job, or whatever it is. So follow me. All of this ties in. I remember making a comment a while back about an NFL player who, when he was asked about how he felt about the gay community, he said that he was brought up in a Christian household and that the gay lifestyle was frowned upon. It wasn't something that was accepted in his household. Um, he didn't down talk them. He didn't down talk the community. He didn't say anything negative. He simply said, in my household, the way we were raised, that was frowned upon. It wasn't something that was godly. Okay? This is his opinion. This is not my opinion. This is his opinion. Okay? Now, I wasn't raised in a hardcore Christian household, but I come from a household where they kind of enforce the same values. Okay? This man was persecuted for this all through the news, all through. I believe he was a Steelers player, and this was years ago. Um, and this guy, he was persecuted. They were saying he uh, offended the community, the gay community, that he needed to apologize for being homophobic, and there was nothing homophobic in what he said. He was simply saying that his upbringing, he was taught that uh, two people connecting was man and woman. That's his household. Now, whether you were brought up in a different household and were taught something else, that's totally fine. It should be okay, and he was okay with that. He's just saying, if you're asking me, that's how I was raised. Nothing bad about that. But we are in a time now where if you have a difference of opinion or you speak out, people don't want to hear that. They get their feelings in a bunch. They get hurt. They get sensitive, and they want you to apologize. And I remember my comment simply being, why does he owe them an apology? He didn't say anything offensive. He answered the question and said, my upbringing was this, it wasn't that. Simple. Why does he owe an apology? They forced this person to apologize, and I wasn't happy with that. Because why do you need to apologize for your upbringing? Why do you need to apologize for the values that your family instilled in you? We don't all have the same values. I have friends of mine that I'm super close with. I have family that I'm super close. And we don't agree on every issue. We don't. And if you've been around my podcast long enough, you know I'm very vocal about certain issues. And I know that certain issues that I'm very vocal about, the people that I love don't always agree with. And that's totally fine. I don't expect them to apologize to me, and they don't expect me to apologize to them. These are my views, and that's that. So I grew to start being. I don't. I shouldn't say. I grew to start being really upset about these apology tours that they would send people on. It happened with coaches. It happened with businesses. It happened with social media people, like people who are influencers and people that are whatever. If you had a platform that your voice was heard and it wasn't pushing the right narrative, they would come for you. Oddly enough, what's going on right now, and I know what I'm about to say is gonna be like, oh no, another person's talking about this guy. I have to bring it up because it's all over the media. I'm a very big podcast guy. Obviously, you're listening or watching right now on my podcast. I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time. Um, and I love sitting down and listening to people talk about the stuff that is going on in their life, whether it's good, bad, the ugly, even if it's people that I don't agree with, because I'm trying to understand why you think the way you think. Okay, I like things that make the wheels turn in my head. I don't want to just hear the same stuff that I agree with all the time. I want to hear stuff that I don't necessarily agree with and stuff that I'm not necessarily in tune with so I can learn. Okay, now what I'm getting at is everything that's going on with Mr. Kanye West. Okay, now Kanye is he is a very polarizing. I think is probably the best word to say. He's a very polarizing individual. Okay, um, I used to think that he said stuff to for shock value, and to an extent, I still think he does certain things for shock value, but I think he did it more for shock value when he was younger. I remember being at a concert. I'm not a huge Kanye West fan, but I enjoy some of his music. But I'm not like I don't go buy every single album he puts out. I've been to one concert, and that was I think that's when he put out his second album. But I remember being at a concert and he was comparing himself to Michael Jackson, and I remember saying, we don't get to do that. The fans get to do that. And I remember thinking, I know he's saying this to get a reaction because Michael Jackson was the king, right? When it comes to R&B, whatever. I know some people don't agree. That's fine. It's an opinion. But we know Michael Jackson musically is the pinnacle, and for him to say something like that, that he's the new Michael Jackson, at that time was kind of it sent shock waves through the music industry, right? But I remember thinking, okay, he's sparking a conversation. He wants attention. I get it, um, and that's fine. But I remember going through like as this guy grew and got bigger, I remember thinking, I don't know, I don't fully understand this guy. I want to understand where he's coming from because I feel like he is a uh, troubled soul, and I think that's never been more evident than when he lost his mom. Okay, um, we all have crutches. I have an episode on my podcast talking about crutches. Okay, when his mom passed away, I believe she was having a surgery, um, and I believe it was a body, excuse me, a body altering surgery where she was having some work done. And I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, that his mom lost his life during or right after the surgery. Um, I remember telling a good friend of mine, I don't know if he's going to bounce back from this because that was his shining light. That was his everything. Everything was, he was so close with her. Obviously, I don't know this man, but from everything that he put out into the public, into the world, he was very close with this woman, and rightfully so. It's his mom. And I remember saying, I don't think he's going to bounce back from this, and I wouldn't be surprised if he committed suicide. Distinctly remember saying that because he was being so emotional, and it worried me. And it would worry me for anybody, not just for Kanye. Like, It worries me for anybody who loses family that they're close to like that, because losing someone like that can drive you to those emotions, to those thoughts. Um, so when I talk about stuff like this, it's not because he's some star. I don't do all that. Like, oh my God, I'm not that hung up on someone who's famous, okay? Trust me, I've been in the music industry. I've been around people that you guys would be like, oh my God, you hung out with this person, you had drinks with this person. I've been around all these people. I get it. It's whatever, okay? Um, what's the saying? Everybody puts on their pants one leg at a time, just like me. That's kind of how I look at those things. Anyways, Kanye proceeded to go through life and just kind of, you know, ruffle feathers. He would seem like he'd have it together, and then he'd go off the deep end. And I do think that yes, Kanye has some mental health issues that he needs to deal with, but I also think he is. How can I say this? He is not crazy. Okay, I think there is a lot of truth in what he says. I also think there's some things that he says that are questionable, but I also think that there's a lot of truth to what he says. I think where he struggles is the delivery of his message. Um, and I think it's never more evident than when he just kind of does certain things where it's like it's a mixture of shock value to get your attention, and then once he's got your attention, he tries to deliver that message. Um, I don't know if him being a billionaire that he needs to do it that way, but he chooses to do it that way. He recently wore the White Lives Matter T-shirt. Okay, and the minute I saw it, I said, "Oh man, this is gonna ruffle some. This is gonna piss the world out." All right, one second. And it did. It pissed the world out. Me, I don't give a fuck about Black Lives Matter, the movement. Okay, the movement I fuck with. It's the the organization. Okay, I don't give a fuck about Black Lives Matter, the organization. It has been it has been proven that they stole money from everybody who donated. I have friends that donated to this organization. Friends, I have friends. If you go to my Instagram, I have photos that I left up on purpose during the George Floyd rallies that I took my sons to them in my hometown because I needed to jump out in front of it because they were seeing all these things on TikTok, and I wanted to make sure that they weren't being they weren't being given the wrong information. So in order to make sure that I was jumping in front of that and teaching them the correct way, I said, "Do you want to go to a rally? I have a friend that's going to speak." And they said yes. So I took them there, and they watched a friend of mine speak, and they marched. We marched that day. This was the very, very, very beginning of this whole George Floyd thing. I did that to teach them to jump out in front of it and to have them experience what these rallies were about, and to show them they're not all bad rallies. They're not all stuff where they break windows and spray paint. A lot of these are peaceful. They got out of hand later, but I wanted to show my kids this, okay? I left these pictures up for a reason. We had signs, the kids had signs that said BLM. Okay, this was before there was an organization. Okay, this is when everybody was supporting that. Yes, Black Lives Matter because of what was going on. Very infant stages. I left those up because I want people to understand the movement, the idea, the coming together of the Black Lives Matter movement was something that I think most people supported, me included, my kids included. Where it got crazy and got confusing was when the organization took over and actually formed this organization, started asking for donations, and then a year later, the cover gets pulled that they were uh, taking the money, buying mansions, paying people an obscene amount of money, paying protesters, paying to get protesters out. It just everything. The covers got blown off this organization. I left those up because I want you guys to understand that at one point, I myself and my kids were very supportive, but we no longer support this organization because of what they've done to the people that supported them. They turned their backs on them and they used them, and they burned the very community that loved them and showed them support. They burned them. Kanye wearing this White Lives Matter T-shirt conjured up a bunch of feelings. I get it. I understand why he wore it, to start a dialogue. Okay, Kanye does have white children, um, and I do agree with him where he says, "Hey, you know, what if my kids were to say, Daddy, okay, if Black Lives Matter, what about us? What about our lives? They're white. Do our lives matter? Yes, they do." I think he wore this T-shirt to start the conversation. Okay, was it smart? I don't know. I don't know. It's not something I would have done, but whatever. Kanye does what Kanye does. My biggest issue with what's been going on recently, and I've been outspoken about this, was this. He recently went on the Nori podcast with DJ EFN, and it's the Drink Champs podcast, and he did an episode. I think it was like 45 minutes long. And there was kickback from it. Most of you know, if you've been on the internet recently, you know that there's been a lot of kickback. Uh, he said some things about the Jewish community. Um, didn't talk down on them, but had some very strong opinions of how they are the leaders of the industry and how they kind of pull strings and people are forced to kind of follow these guidelines or there are repercussions. Um, there are a few communities that you have to be very careful with when speaking about, and the Jewish community is one of them. The gay community is one of them. You got to be very careful when you're speaking about minority groups. It's just one of those things. Especially if you're someone who has millions and millions and millions and millions of followers. Your platform is really big, and they look at it like, hey, you have a very big platform, and if you speak sideways about any of these communities, people will follow and listen. Um, my issue is this, and we're talking about censorship and people being able to have an opinion without being canceled. They are now trying to cancel Kanye because they are trying to say he's lost his mind, he's disrespectful, he's offended everybody. I listened to this podcast and the things he said about the industry, the things he said about certain artists, the things he said about the way these certain businesses do certain things and how they block people out of the way and how they favor certain people or how they ask you to fall in line. See, the scary thing about what Kanye is doing is he has the money to go to war, and that scares a lot of people. See, a lot of people don't realize someone like myself, I can't go to war with an industry like that because I ain't got my money up like Kanye. And most of us don't. The guy's a billionaire. Okay? Um, but what scares the industry and people involved in this industry is that he has his money up. Okay? If you ban, cancel, or block this guy from a platform, he has the means to actually create a platform to where he can be heard. And that scares people. Um, what frustrated me about this whole situation about Kanye speaking out and having these opinions is Nori uh, went on an apology tour. He got pressure from his friends in the industry, and now is is unapologetic, saying sorry for everything. Sorry, I didn't know that this episode would offend so many people. Kanye's my boy, but I this, I that, this, that, and the third. And he folded. He took the episode down. He, uh, even though Kanye is saying, hey, Nori's still my brother, please don't go hard on him. He's just under a lot of pressure. I, uh, I don't agree with Nori having to apologize, and I don't agree with people saying that he should take it down. That people are offended by what he said. Here's the thing: if you are offended by what someone said on a podcast, don't listen to the episode. If it is a podcast that you supported and you're that offended, unfollow, unsubscribe. Don't listen to the podcast no more. If it is something like that, you have options. But what should never be an option is to cancel, block, or silence somebody. Now, you could say, okay, well, Ray, what if it's talking about blatant racism, blatant this? Listen, guys, censorship works very, it's a very crazy line to start straddling. And we figured that out during the pandemic because, you know, people were being blocked from saying anything that was different about the COVID-19 situation, about the vaccine, about travel, about people losing their jobs, about how many people were dying that and really weren't dying, about the age gap, the age where it was killing these people in this age bracket and not killing these people in this bracket, or the types of medicine you should take. Anytime you spoke out and it wasn't the narrative that the government was pushing, um, you were blocked, you were banned, you were shadow banned. This is censorship. This is how we get into that swampy water where we may agree on certain things. Yeah, censor it until they censor you, and then you're sitting back saying, "Why would you censor me? I didn't. I said this, and it wasn't really against that, but they censored you." Everybody's okay with censorship until it comes your way, and I think that we have to understand that the world is the world. I said this on a 90 seconds of inspiration, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, that the world uh, is an ugly place at times. You're gonna see, hear, and see people do things that you don't agree with. Uh, you just are. You're gonna hear people have opinions about stuff that you're like, wow, how could they think like that? That's the world. Okay. If I go to if I go somewhere where I don't feel comfortable and they act a certain way towards me, I just don't go there no more. If I'm watching a talk show, which I never watch TV, but if I'm watching a talk show and they they're talking about something they're always talking about topics that I don't support, I just don't support it. If I'm listening to a podcast where they're having they're continuously putting on people and pushing a narrative, like trying to force it on me, I just won't listen no more. These are my choices. But I don't go on a witch hunt to try and cancel nobody. I don't try to get someone canceled or blocked or get it shut down. I don't. Because I feel like everybody should be able to have their opinion, state their opinion, and if we don't like it, we just don't tune in. We're not doing that anymore. Now we want to end people's lives. We want to end their careers. We want to shut them down. And that is a very fine line. Man, there are some people like that have done next to nothing, that have got their YouTubes banned, that have had their TikToks blocked. These are people who have incomes coming from these apps. My platform isn't that big, so I don't have a crazy income coming from YouTube or TikTok or things of that nature. It's not that big. I have a decent platform. I make a little bit of money, but my platform isn't huge like that where I'm making a living off of it. So we run the risk of towing a line that can get very dangerous. All right. Um, See, I have a very And I was talking to someone about this yesterday. I have a very different view when it comes to uh, people that I don't agree with. I actually get intrigued. Um, so I remember a while back someone asked me, "Well, what if it was nothing but someone pushing white power, and all they talked about was white power and the master race, and they hate minorities and da 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 da, and they were preaching separation of race and this and this and that. Would you let somebody spew that? And how could you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd actually listen too." And they looked at me so shocked. Why would you listen? So you can get poisoned? No. See, I listen because I want to know how did you get that way? Like what happened in your life to make you think like that? I'm curious. What did you go through and what were you taught to make you think like that? I'm intrigued. I want to understand. See, the problem is we fear what we don't understand. Okay? It's been like that for years. That stuff is heavily embedded in racism. It is. If you are told that people of a certain race are this way and you've never had an experience with them, let's say you come from a part of the country where there's not a whole lot of Asians, there's not a whole lot of Latins, there's not a whole lot of African Americans, there's not a whole lot of whatever, but you are always told via social media or movies or whatever it is that these people are a certain way, you're going to believe it because you've never had an experience, so you fear it until you actually take the time to learn, listen, and understand. And then you realize I I had these opinions out of fear. I didn't understand. Now I understand. These things aren't true about these people at all. You hear what I'm saying? We we fear what we don't understand. And I'm someone who wants to understand. So when I hear someone like Kanye speak, I don't have to agree with everything that he says, okay? And I don't. I honestly don't. I don't agree with everything he says. But I do agree with some of the things he says, okay? I come from the music industry. I have, I was on the underground level, but I seen enough stuff on the level that I was on to know that a lot of the stuff he's talking about is very true, okay? But when I hear someone like him speak, I listen not because I'm taking everything in that he says and I'm saying he is right 100%, but I'm taking some of the things saying, okay, well, he's right there. I know for a fact because I've seen it. And then I know he says certain things where I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't agree with that. But the fact is, I hear him out. I take what I can from whatever the interview is that I think is that he's spot on, and then the rest I just throw it by the wayside. But what I don't do is go on a rampage and say let's get him canceled. Let's cancel all his. Let's the J.P. Morgan. What they do, they canceled their ties with him, so now they don't they don't take care of his money or anything. Actually, everything that's been going on with him since that interview, he's it's proven his point. The powers that be that he was talking about, they're proving his point. They don't. I don't know if they even realize that they're actually proving his point. So instead of people allowing this guy to have an opinion, whether they agree with it or not, they're doing everything he said they were going to do. Censorship is not the answer, guys. If you hear something you don't like, you hear something you don't agree with, change the channel. Okay? Change the channel. You don't need to watch it, you don't need to listen to it, whatever. If it's someone that you follow on Instagram, stop following them. If it's someone that you used to love and you used to support, stop supporting them. But don't go The answer is never to go and say, hey, kick this person off the platform. They don't deserve any outlet whatsoever. Who makes those rules? Those rules are okay until they come back around for you. There are a lot of people who supported certain things that were going on during the pandemic and were pushing this, yes, yes, do this, do that, until they realized that it came back around to them and now it affects them. Then it was like, wait, what are you talking? I supported this. What do you mean that I can't do this now or I have to do this? I supported you guys. It happened to so many people. There are a lot of people that it's funny that I always seem to wear this t-shirt that I'm wearing during the right time. This is not a planned like I'm going this is one of my workout shirts, but it's my vaccine passport t-shirt. I always seem to wear this t-shirt when I start talking about this. But there are a lot of people now who did the vaccine, who did every booster they were supposed to, and all the stories and news articles coming out from the actual the World Health Organization talking about how they uh, didn't have proof that that Pfizer didn't have proof that the vaccine stopped transmission of the virus and how they just had to rush it out. A lot of these people they feel duped, but these are people who were shutting friendships down, shutting people down on Instagram in their households, because they were pushing a narrative. And then they were like, "Oh, I'm not talking to this person no more because they're idiots and they're not doing this and they're not following the rules." And so they went along with the censorship. I hope you get banned. I hope you get blocked. And now we're 2 years later, and stories are coming out to the contrary of what they believed. Again, censorship is dangerous, and it's always great when they're censoring something that you don't agree with until they come around and censor something that you do agree with. We gotta be careful. We gotta be careful. Everybody's so quick to try and go cancel somebody because we don't agree with them. The simple answer is if you don't agree, don't tune in. Don't watch the video. Don't listen to the podcast. Don't follow them on Instagram. Don't follow their TikTok. Just don't. And if you catch yourself going back to their profiles or whatever, just block them so you don't get the temptation. If it's not for you, it's not for you. There are a lot of things that I like that are not for everybody. Hell, I've read books that I think weak minded people would get very influenced by. I mean it. I've read books where I've thought, once I finished a book, I'm like, man, if I was a weak minded person, this book would have me doing some wild, wild shit. Because this book is talking about some craziness. If you're not strong minded, it'll get you in a lot of, you'll get in your feelings with a lot of stuff that's going on these days. So I'm going to leave it at this, guys. I don't agree with we should be watching our mouth with what we say. I think that is up to the individual. Okay. Um, and there is nobody that's listening or watching this podcast right now that doesn't have something in their past that they can't be canceled for. Okay? There's not one of you who's listening or watching that doesn't have something in your past that you can be canceled for. It could be an old opinion that you had. It could be whatever. It could be something that you did on video or something that you did to another person that has a video or a recorded conversation that you had or whatever it is, a tweet, a Facebook post, whatever. We all have them. We all have them. We have something in our past that we think is not a big deal, but if someone were to take it and amplify it, it would be a big deal and people would try to cancel us. It just is what it is. You're not the same person you were a few years ago. Hell, if you're like me, you work on trying to become a better person every day. You're not the same person you were last year. Some of the things I believed last year, I don't believe this year. That's how life works. You're supposed to change. But in this day and age, they don't allow people to change. They don't allow people to do any of that. They want you to bow down, apologize, and stay on your knees until they say you're okay to get back up. And that's not the way it should be. Okay? I'm gonna say it again. There's not one of us who's listening or watching to this podcast right now that has a flawless background, a flawless history. It's just not the case. So, do I agree with everything Kanye said? No. Do I agree with some of it? Yes. Do I think it's right that they took down the episode and that Nori's apologizing and that people are kicking him off of Kanye off of platforms? No, I don't agree with it. You can simply go to the outlets on Instagram and watch the comments. People are like, "Oh, I'm unfollowing your podcast. How dare you give them a platform? I thought you guys were better than that. Uh, this was drink champs, not politic champs. This is, I mean, people went in. Cool. If you don't like that he had Kanye on there, unfollow the podcast, or even better, don't listen to that episode. Listen to the next episode of whoever else you like. Simple. It's a simple, simple thing to do. Put your feelings aside, have your opinion, and move on. Don't like that episode. I'm not listening to it. Simple. That's all I got, guys. I tried to keep it to 30 minutes. We're at 42 now. But I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. None of us are flawless in this. We all have stuff in our past that we could be canceled for. I'm sorry. Maybe it's not cancelable offense to you and me, but anything that gets amplified on the level of millions of people, they will find a way to pick it apart and say, yep, cancel that person. And I do not think that's the answer. All right. Um, Aside from that, I hope you guys are good. I hope you um, stand your ground, whatever it is you believe in. If you really believe in it, do not fold. Do not apologize for being you. Don't apologize for having an opinion. Don't apologize for the way you were raised. Don't apologize for having the values that you have. You don't have to say sorry. You can say, hey, if it offends you, I understand, but this is how I was raised. This is the way I feel. But you don't need to go on an apology tour, okay? If someone doesn't like it, they don't have to come around you. And we're on my podcast. If you don't like me, the stuff that I talk about, the things that I believe, the stories that I share, or the way I live my life, unsubscribe. Don't follow me. Skip the episode. Whatever it is. Very easy. All right? Uh, like I always say, my life isn't perfect. Oftentimes it's a mess, but for me, it is the perfect mess. I love you guys. I hope you have a very blessed day or evening wherever you're at. And please check out the website, raymolina.com. My Instagram is at it's Ray Molina. The TikTok is also the same. And the Instagram for the podcast is at the Perfect Mess Pod. Um, Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, the Perfect Mess Podcast with Ray Molina. And that's all I got. I love you guys. God bless. Please, please be safe and take care of each other. Peace.